Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Rob Brokaw. Coach Brokaw is the athletic performance coach for all students at Casteel High School in Queen Creek, Arizona. Prior to that, Brokaw was head strength conditioning coach for North Bend Central High School, strength coach at Archbishop Bergan Catholic School, and health and fitness specialist for MediFit Corporate Services. Brokaw created the Nebraska High School Strength Conditioning Clinic to bring some top minds into strength conditioning into Nebraska to help develop high school programs. He served as Nebraska State Director for the National High School Strength Coaches Association. Coach Brokaw was selected as the Mid-America Regional Strength Coach of the Year in 2019, and in 2021 was selected as the National High School Strength of the Year. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Well, thank you for having me on. This is a good time. I've been listening to podcasts all over, and I definitely started listening to yours a few months back, and it was neat to receive a phone call and asking if I'd be on.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time. I know you're on vacation and you probably got 1,000 other things to do, but that you'd chill out for a while and answer some questions, man, I appreciate it.
No problem. Always up for talking shop.
So, I mean, we'll kick it off with 2021, the National High School Strength Coach of the Year. That's a humongous honor with all of the great coaches that are across the nation. So how did that kind of shape up?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was something else. And the NHSSEA is kind of close to my heart. So it was really quite the honor to get that. Really, it was just, I just kept trying to push the profession as much as I could. In Nebraska, it was, 2015 or so. Years are kind of rolling up on me now. A lot more gray hairs now. I went and got a haircut the other day. It was scary. But it's a lot of, I went all around the country to learn as much as I possibly could. And I was like, it would be, maybe we should bring these cats here. So then I started a conference and tried to push the profession as much as I could. And I did a survey for the Nebraska Coaches Association magazine. And I just blanketed the whole state, asked information on how many programs had a strength program, whether that was just a weight room. Do you have a dedicated strength coach? What do your programs look like? How's that funded? Stipends and all the above. And I think we started with, there were 5 full-time designated strength coaches. And then I did it again. I can't remember how many years later, but we were over 50 full-time. That was their designated position. So I think it was just kind of a combination of me trying to be the best where I was at. So trying to make my program the best that I possibly could, but then trying to elevate, push that tide up as much as I can to elevate everybody and the position itself in the state of Nebraska. And a lot of coaches kind of appreciated that. So anytime something came up, they would nominate me for that. And then it's quite the vetting process. So it's not like it's, so-and-so's got a social media thing and they're at this school and they got a really nice weight room. It's more meaningful than that. So appreciated the process a lot. And, fortunately enough, people thought that I was doing a good job and decided to recognize that. And it was just quite an honor.
You mentioned your clinics in there, and I know very little about setting up a clinic. I know about setting up a podcast, and you get a lot of no's, you get a lot of maybes, you get a lot of non-returned emails, phone calls, or you get guys clear up to the scheduling point and then it drops off. So something like this is even more in detail. So getting coaches there and getting the right people for what you wanted, what kind of process was that?
It was really asking the right questions, I guess, and knowing that there were certain people that resonated with me more so than others. So it wasn't like, this so-and-so's got this going on. It was, I want to know more about this part of this aspect of your program. And I was learning in general and just picked up a good amount of really good minds in the world of strength and conditioning. And developed a relationship through those questions. So it was genuine interest, and my intent has always been good. So it was like, I'm in a small town in Nebraska, and I'm trying to get this thing off the ground, and I got $0, and I have zero this, I have zero space, I have zero time. But I feel that this is an aspect that we could benefit from, and really just kind of dove both feet in and wanted to know as much as I could from anybody. I also didn't have a traditional route to strength and conditioning. So it was I don't have biases, in the best sense of the word. Like, I didn't learn how to do strength and conditioning from, University X, and then I have this side of things. And then, so I was a complete outsider. Like, I wasn't an insider at all. I had no connection. So, I didn't know proper protocol, I guess, to meet people. I went to the conferences. I was burning the gas. I would go to these coaches and talk to them, so they knew that I was invested. And then from there, it was, hey, I would love to have you come out to teach a bunch of people that don't know who you are. Like, to be honest with you, I mean, you're a big deal, but there's a group of coaches that, we're in Nebraska. If it doesn't say Husker Power on it, it's worthless, So kind of bringing that those pieces in were it was neat, because then they got out here and we put on a really good clinic, and I made sure that everybody had a really good time. Make sure I had enough, places to converse and talk, and make sure that it was not really any room for big time, and because it was intimate, it was small. That first clinic that we had, I was expecting maybe 50 coaches to show up, and we had 150 coaches show up. Then from there, I made a really bad business decision looking back at it. The whole first conference was all about unified strength and conditioning, which Gary Schofield had put into my brain that, yeah, you need to be unified. You need to have speaking the same language in the weight room, and everybody's got to know what's going on. And if you have a bunch of coaches in there that aren't on the same page, it doesn't work as well. So that 150, I think we had, I can't remember how many schools that were represented out of that 150. I think there was like 75 different schools. Those 75 schools would show up, but they sent their one coach that was there, which was great, because then it ended up making it a lot better. But it was very focused. And when we had kind of a diagram set in place, talking with other people that have gone to a lot of clinics, they were like, you want one of this? So like one practical, one theoretical, one logistics. Like, logistics and me are best friends. And then one like more meaningful, personal to the coach themselves. So it's organization and planning. And I mean, shoot, when we had Ron McKeefery come in, he would talk about a lot of things that just helped him in general, from resources that he used to family planning to, I mean, he's got a tremendous involvement in an adoption outreach program. And it's like, man, that's a whole other area that, kind of makes you think about what your life is like and what you can maybe contribute in different ways. And that was, it just made a lot of sense. And then a lot of people had a lot of input and had a lot of fun with it. And it's something that's still going today. So Nebraska Strength Coaches Association just put out their schedule for their upcoming clinic, and it's just as strong as ever. So it's something I'm really proud of.
Okay, I took a few notes in there, and we'll kind of head down a few things you said, but I think I know what town in Nebraska were you at?
So I grew up in Valley, Nebraska, which is outside of Omaha. And then right next to that was this town called Fremont, and they had a small Catholic school that a buddy of mine, Seth Marouz, who's still the head coach there, got a job coaching and teaching, and I was working at that MediFit, which is the Union Pacific Railroad, downtown Omaha. Just got married, bought a house in my hometown, had a couple kids, and decided that I was gonna. Seth was like, "Hey, do you want to help coach?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." He coached in football, played football with him in Nebraska Wesleyan, and then he's like, Man, we need a strength program set up." So I ended up leaving the Union Pacific Railroad, nice cushy job, walking people around and taking vice presidents through their workouts, to be a elementary para, so I could be on campus there, and then just tried to develop the strength and conditioning program as well as I could. And then there was, of course, small Catholic school, so there's no money. So it was I actually started the clinic to help fund the position of of a strength coach, and then build up the weight room and do everything that we could with that. And then Freddie, who's a founding member of the NHSSCA, said that, man, you need to go get your teaching license. So I went and got my teaching certification, and a school down the road in North Bend where I ended up going. It's just literally like 15 minutes down a highway from Omaha. So Valley, Fremont, North Bend. I ended up getting a full-time teaching position there where it was strength or weight room only throughout all that. And then somewhere in between there, I became the librarian at the Fremont Bergan. So that was fun. I got that big promotion of librarian in there. But then at North Bend, I was the full-time strength coach, and kept the clinic going and built the program up as much as I possibly could.
I like Fremont. It's been a while since I've been there, but
Yeah.
the last time I was there was it's been some years now, but there was a Buck Brannaman clinic, and we hauled our horses up there, and that arena there is really nice. So yeah, we spent the weekend up there. I remember there was a great Italian restaurant in town, and we went in there and ate, and yeah, it was just a nice Nebraska town. I really enjoyed it up there.
You know, you had a comment on a podcast. I think it was the one with Toby, or maybe not. But you were talking about you got farm kids, so they all have the strength. And in my brain, I'm going, let's see what he answers here. And you gave the exact answer that I always give. Farming isn't quite what it used to be. A lot of machines do most of the work. Yep, that's exactly right. Nobody square bales anymore. So it was
I
was like, this guy knows small towns, man. He knows exactly what's up.
It's crazy. I picked up hay for my football coach until I was in my mid-20s because he couldn't get any kids to do it. And I just had enough respect for him that if he called, I couldn't tell him no. So, I'd work all day as an electrician. I come home, I get a phone call. Hey, I got 150 bales out here. It won't take us very long. Will you come help? I'd show up, but it's what you do for people you admire, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, there's certain people out there that I would definitely, at the drop of a hat. Yep, I'll be there.
The one thing, I listened to your McKeefrey podcast, and it was really good. And I have his book in the other room. I just have so many books that I haven't gotten to it yet. But on there, you talked about a non-traditional path to the weight room, and you kind of hit on it there a minute ago. I think you said you just had to get yourself in shape. And then once you did that, you found a love for the weight room, and then kind of figured out you could teach people. I kind of went through the same thing. Is that kind of how you got there? Like you fixed yourself, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is fun, and it's not that hard.
No, it was, we had my first strength coach, really my only strength coach that I've had, was in high school, and it was a small neighboring town to Valley in Waterloo, Mark Shaleen. He was a 80s Husker, part of that scoring explosion. He was the fullback on that squad. He had a really small shop, and I was in there at 4:30 in the morning working out with a guy that was playing at a UNK, a small college in Nebraska, a Husker, and then an 80-year-old lady, and then me. So it's four of us in this small room, stepping over each other, bikes on one side, and then a cage, and then a platform, and then the old universal machine that I would absolutely love to have right now, just for personal sake. And then a couple of machines on the back wall, and it was a riot. So we'd go in there, and trained, and it was a lot of fun. I got injured, messed up my knee, and I was 330 pounds going into my junior year of high school. So I was literally the last kid on the gassers that everyone's applauding for. Hey, Rob, So it was that, and then between my junior and senior year, I had that knee surgery, and the doctor was like, "You can't play football unless you drop some weight." So um, I did absolutely everything wrong, looking back at it, but it worked. I dropped 100 pounds, so I was sitting 230 going into my senior year of high school, and then it was kind of one of those things where I'm 5 foot 10, 11, strong, but we ran the ball 99% of the time, like it wasn't like and then one of our assistant coaches, I asked him, I was like, "Do you think I could go play somewhere?" He said, "Yeah, without a doubt. You should go look at these schools, NAIA, Division three. Division three, there's only like one school. Nebraska Weston's the only one." Fell in love with that, and they had exercise science, and I was like, "Oh, I could go be a physical therapist." And then that turned into I don't want to do anything but be in the weight room all day. And then while I was in college, I hurt my knee again, and then really rehab and the weight room and taking all that on. I was like, I really like this, so I think I'm going to go this route. And then, God's plan kind of set me into this non-traditional route and was like, "Hey, you think you got a plan, but we're gonna try this out." And however many years later, and then I thought I was gonna go back to my hometown and start a strength and conditioning program. Got laughed out of there, out of the superintendent's office. It's kind of funny. 10 years after I made that, that first superintendent, you walk in and pitch the deal for a strength program. He literally laughed me out of his office. And 10 years later, I won the high school strength and conditioning award, and they were hiring a new strength coach and building a room. I was like, wow, this is great. And if it would have gone any other way, they probably wouldn't be getting the strength coach and wouldn't be building the new room and having those expenses there if I hadn't have done that. I had that route taken such a long time ago. So it's just kind of neat how it all comes into play. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of gets put on your heart to do something, and then you just go and do it. I'm really bad at taking no for an answer. So it's kind of one of those things that I see no as not yet, and then keep praying on it and keep working at it, and then you'll be put in the right spot. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it now from many years later.
It's funny how you end up where you end up. And if you're willing to do what you're being asked, you'll get put into some really crazy positions. It's ironic how it shakes out.
Oh yeah. No, it is.
I know this was not the plan for me at all. By now I was supposed to be riding top-notch cow horses, and now I've got a room full of high school kids lifting weights. I don't know how to explain it.
It's awesome. Love it.
Now, you talked about that small gym. I think there's a lot to be said for small rooms. I think it creates a whole different environment because you have to work together. You have to get out of each other's way. Everybody is forced to mingle whether they want to or not. Knowing that and knowing what kind of helped build your passion, how are you able to take some of those ideas to what you're doing now?
Yeah. So the management piece of the weight room is kind of what I built most of everything that I have going. So it was a lot of I had the answer for absolutely everything when I first started at Bergan. Like, we walk into the room, we're going to do these exercises, try basic training, we're going to do this, we got this going on. And then when we get into the room, I'm like, "Johnny, why are you over there right now? No, that's not what you're supposed to do right now. You guys didn't do 4 sets, you did 2. What are we doing?" So then it turned into, how can I manage this room a little bit better? And this is before anything on an iPad, before anything got going. And it was, okay, we're going to go four kids to a rack. Okay. when you're doing this movement, I want you to go here. And they're like, well, then a kid was like, well, can't you just like put dots on the floor? It's like, when they do the 12, the 11 guys on the sideline, they stand on the circle and then you have 11, so you know where to go. So I did a labeling system inside the rack. So like 1 is where you'd spot a bench, 2 is where you do most of the barbell movements, 3 is the step out where like your platform would be if you have a platform, 4 is like at the edge of the platform, and then 5 would be a step beyond that. And then on the left-hand side of the rack, that's negative. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And then everything on the right is going to be positive. So it would be an exercise and then where it's located. So that way, because people are always stepping on each other and, push-ups done in the wrong spot, and you're way too close to a moving barbell, but you got to get this figured out. I told them where to go, what direction to face, always face the rack unless specified otherwise. And then from there, it was okay, we have so much time to do the workout. And then I grabbed like a clipboard and I put just a sheet of paper, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they'd go through the first set. And then when everybody got done with the first set, they would flip it over to 2. They had to wait for everybody else to get on to round 2. And then they would start their second set. So then they would go through the second set of each exercise, flip it over to 3. Well, then you found the kids that were burning through everything really fast. And then the kids that were messing around a lot, they would wait until the very end and then do the reps. And it didn't jibe quite the right way. So from there, it was a PowerPoint presentation that I put up on a laptop because we didn't have the screen or anything like that there, that had just the timer that went around. And then I got kind of fancy with that. Like, they kind of look like Rack Coach does now, that cycle through. And then I found out that this is way back when they first started. They were going around and selling it. And I'm like, well, I kind of do that with this. And, but then I got away from that because I spent way too much time on that. The whole goal is for it to be more efficient. And I got a timing bell. So it was a free app at the time. Now it costs $5 a year. So it's, high class stuff here, but there's a timer and a bell would go off, a boxing timer pro, and it would just time the bell. So if the bell rings, come out swinging, you got 55 seconds for your main movement, and then rotate through. And then now everybody was on the clock. So then my sight lines worked even better, because I would be like, okay, you guys are all doing rows here. You're all doing single arm presses here. You all got bench press and spot. Bell rings. If you're not doing something, you're wrong. So it's really easy to ID choke points and who's not doing, and it made the room run really well. And we got way more done than we ever thought that we could, and in a higher quality, because I could use my sight lines in the weight room, pick out who needs help. And instead of constantly having to manage the whole room, I could start to, okay, you need this, you need this, you need this, and coaching a heck of a lot more rather than babysitting. And that made the room run really well. And if the room's running well, and you have decent programming, you're going to get some pretty good results. So, kids got bigger, kids got stronger. And then from there it was, just trying to figure out, okay, now we got this part figured out. What's the next step? This part's figured out. What's the next step? And Ron McKeefery's book, CEO Strength Coach, was a big part of that, because that was the managing part. So he's got, you have to be a manager, you have to be a technician, which is what we learned in school, and all the time under the barbell and all that kind of fun stuff. And then you had the entrepreneurial part. And that's kind of where the clinic and everything else came into play, because you had to kind of make it work. But looking back at like the time at Fremont, it was all, I wish I would have done more of the, I guess I had to do the manager part first. But I wish you could have gotten more into the entrepreneurial part of utilizing more resources that we had, more people that we had, having them do more rather than trying to take control of everything. So, but yeah, that was the biggest piece, was getting that. And anytime any coach was like, well, how do I get started? I'm like, well, this is where you need to start. Like, you might not need to start at velocity-based training. You need to start at the basics and how you run in your room, because if your room isn't run very well, you're going to spend all your time fixing the stuff that isn't fixed yet. So getting those pieces into play was, paramount. I think I made a video way back. I was in North Bend, probably pre-COVID, of Iron Tiger management, class management system. It's on the NHSSCA page. I'm constantly just throwing people that so everyone can see, okay, this is a way to do it, not the way. There's 1,000 different ways, and a bunch of coaches have taken it and made it even better, which is awesome to see. From exercise selection, they're going, okay, if the bar is already here, I can make this exercise here, and now there's less transition time because they're not having to change equipment out and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, that was managing the room was, especially in volume. And that was kind of one of the things that, when I was getting vetted for, the NHSSCA awards, it was that I was in a small school, so I didn't have the volume part of it, taking place. Like, how could you justify you, who's got 175 kids, to another program that has this many kids? And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty sure that this is built to scale. So you could do this in a huge room with a lot of kids. And now we're, running 800 plus kids through the weight room a week using the exact same format, and it works pretty slick.
You were mentioning there a little bit ago, the Lord works in mysterious ways. So as I was studying for this, you started bringing up The System by Johnny Parker. And I had just researched and read that book and did a podcast with Johnny Parker. So it kind of worked out perfect. But what did that book do for you and your system?
So a lot of it made me look at it in a different way, and it made me audit my program in a more sophisticated manner. So you're right. There's only so many reps that a novice athlete has in the tank. And then how you are going to, break those repetitions up makes a lot of sense. Like, you only have so many quality reps. And Dan John had always said, you got 10 good reps in you, per training session type, and it was like, okay, that would work. Everything kind of pieced together, but it made me take a look at our programming in a different way. And I still have notebooks full of, 19%, 27%, and all the repetitions laid out, and all the intensities laid out. And it really just kind of looked at how to audit the program to make sure that we're not doing too much, but more so on the high school, and make sure that you're doing enough. So when you have those kids that are looking to push to that next level or that next step, okay, they've kind of reached that 2-3 year mark underneath the belt, they could probably handle another 50 repetitions throughout their training session. And then how we're going to display that and make it work for the program that we have. I mean, if I had an hour and a half training session 4 days a week, it would look a heck of a lot different than it does now. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody else that's listening on a high school strength coach podcast knows that, yeah, it would be great if we could do a little bit more bodybuilding. But I know, and that the kid, if they're going to go lift on their own, what are they going to do? They're going to bodybuild. And to tell you the truth, there's only certain parts of the year that I'm really going to sacrifice repetitions for bodybuilding, when that kid's got to be strong enough and explosive enough to do whatever they want to on the field, court, mat, what have you. So really, it was just it still is a good audit. If I think that something's out of whack, or if I want to take a look at our programming, I'm busting out those percentages that he lays out very well in that book. And it makes you think about your programming differently. Now, obviously, the system's coming from the Soviet side, and the Soviets had a little bit more assistance than your average high school kid. I probably as close as some of these kids can get when they shoot up a foot and a half over a summer. They got as much hormonal help assistance as you can when it comes to strength and power. But it was just a really unique way to look at your program and to make sure that you're on the right path.
What I liked about it as I got into it was all the information got put into one place. So you've got Managing of a Weightlifter. I have that book. Well, instead of going and finding 5 books, Louis' Book of Methods, Vermeil's stuff, Prilepin's chart, it's all in a textbook style book, and you can find it, and it's pretty easy to read. That was probably the most enjoyable it was. So as you go through it, you're like, everything's here. All I got to do is
the fact that that's where it came from. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you go through, somebody's got a mastermind program or on X, Y, or Z, and they're bringing it through. And I think that it's very important that you know where those things came from. I mean, you look at in Arizona, I'm from Nebraska originally, moved out to Arizona. Joe Ken at Arizona State made the tier system a big deal. Well, I was in Nebraska to talk about the tier system, and it's right over the head of everybody. Out here, they're like, oh yeah, Joe Ken's tier system. They know the history behind why it was made and everything that's there and why it is the way that it is. And when you know the roots of something, it makes it more impactful in your whole program. So when he goes through and kind of explains those things and lays it out to where he gives you that background in there and sets it up to where you can piece it all together. It's almost like having a athlete management system in one book. You're right, bringing it all together in one spot. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about regional ideas before the podcast started. You go to Nebraska, it's going to be Boyd Epley, Husker Power, metabolic circuits, ground-based, all the stuff that Boyd brought into the strength conditioning world. Yeah, you go to Arizona and it's Joe Ken and the tier system, and you go somewhere else, it's going to be something totally different. You go back east, you get into a lot of Buddy Morris ideas probably, when all those guys were at Buffalo and when they were at Pittsburgh, all the different things they did. So it's kind of
out here now too. So his circle is widening.
Yeah.
You get those, and I always thought it was neat at Nebraska because you got like same with pop culture. So like when I was growing up, you'd get the West Coast stuff and the East Coast stuff because back in 2005 when I graduated, it was you didn't have social media and things like that, not near as prevalent. So you would get these culture things that would go north, south, east, and west, and they would cross in Nebraska. So you'd get a good like mix of who's doing what and what's going on. And it kind of felt that way. We're getting Texas barbell stuff. We're getting Mike Boyle. We're getting, some West Coast ideas from all over. Up north, they do and that the whole idea of regional influences is the big deal. If you're a great athlete, but live in the north, hockey might be your game. You know what I mean? Whereas if that kid was out east, it might be wrestling. Not to saying that Minnesota, the north doesn't have good wrestling, but at the same time, it's kind of where the culture is and what happens. I mean, my kids just moving from Nebraska to here, is a game changer. Like, I have all girls, so it was they're not gonna. Football would have been definitely one of those sports that we all play. Well, flag football is a varsity high school sport here in Arizona. So my kids were like, I get to play football. It's like, yeah, at the varsity level, you get to play it. My niece moved in with us about 6 years ago, and we came down here and she was playing softball. And we get to softball down here, and it's like softball is your life. Like that's what you do. So she, it just didn't quite click. Well, as soon as she stopped playing softball or decided she was stopping playing softball, the wrestling coach came down the hallway from the wrestling room, was like, "Hey, I heard your daughter, your niece is not playing softball anymore. Do you think she's pretty strong? Do you think that she'd consider wrestling?" I was like, not an ounce of her was wrestling, at all. And the coach was amazing. Coach Frank Torres and Bob Callison, they just did a tremendous job of teaching her some basic things. And I remember that first week, she was like, I'm done I'm not doing this again, and then talked her into it. And now she's down at Arizona now. She came back for winter break and ended up helping out coach during a wrestling tournament that was going on over the break. So it was and that wouldn't have happened had we not moved. Now there's girl wrestling. There was female wrestling in Nebraska there, but it was just kind of like, it's just crazy how it all works. And it wouldn't have been for the locale that we're in. I mean, shoot, we're outside riding bikes right now. It's 75 degrees. I mean, there's we got a swimming pool and a turfed area in the backyard. So everybody's always outside. If I would have had that as a kid, maybe I wouldn't have gotten the 330 pounds. Had the excuse of sitting there playing video games and eating potato chips all day.
My daughter, we would take her out to Arizona in the winter, January, something like that, and let her play softball out there against some of those girls. And it's a different level. I think California, Arizona is probably the number one softball region in the nation. I mean,
they just play all the time.
They play all the time. Texas has an argument in that. I get that. But, man, that California, Arizona softball is for real.
Yeah. Some great athletes, good kids, great athletes. And they just kind of like, it's neat when we get to them because they've been playing those, the club playing 8,000 games a week and all that. So when they get into the weight room and we have a chance to work with them and, I'm not in pain as much as I was, or this isn't happening. That ball's going a little bit further now and I'm not changing anything. It's like, yeah, that's beauty of strength. That's going to help you out.
I had a question on here and I thought about this the other day. We were going to Indiana for a clinic and we got it snowed in south of Chicago. And typically I'd be worried and pushing. And I took it from a standpoint of just enjoy it. Just enjoy where you're at. Just enjoy trying to take that back to the weight room. Every year, your top guys, your top girls, they graduate and you bring in a whole new group of young guys, young girls that you have to start over with. So keeping that wanderlust, keeping that, that push forward to start over and enjoy starting over. How are you able to do that?
Yeah. Oh man. That reminded me, I had this kid named Cole, A-Train at North Bend, and he was such a glue piece in the weight room and he worked his tail off every day. I think he's the kind of guy that had like 6 fumble recoveries in a season. You know what I mean? Like the nose for the ball. He's a lineman in his profession now. Like he's up on climbing power poles and turning people's power back on. Like just a great, tremendous dude. And when he graduated, I was like, oh, literally what am I going to do? Because that was the kid that really brought everybody together. He was telling everybody, hey, we got to hit this summer lift. We got to do this. There was another kid in the weight room and Cole had bright red hair. And this other kid walks in and he was just the same way, bright red hair, super focused, really wanted to be there. And it was like, oh, there's another kid that's going to be coming through and doing that. And it was really then when it was like, I need to be more celebratory of those things throughout it all. So if people that are, I forget who said this, and I need to do a better job. I'm going through a stage where I need to give people credit where credit's due more often. But there's, if you talk about your problems and you contemplate on those things that are going wrong, you're just going to keep sliding down that hole more and more. So it was a way to celebrate what's going on in your room. And then from there, it was like being more hospitable. And I would love to say that we dive more into this than we currently do, but just having this moment of like with the Parker and the system, just another way to audit your program or to take a look at what you're doing on the day to day. I don't have a lot of hobbies, but I do watch a lot of garbage TV and series and whatnot. So I'll put something on and watch that while I'm programming or, farting around the house, fixing stuff or whatever. And it was a TV show called The Bear, and it's a cooking show, and it's got that, a lot of good actors in it.
Yeah. It's got Maddie Matheson's in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So a lot of good, funny pieces, but there's an episode in there where they send the cousin to go work at this 5-star Michelin restaurant, and they were talking about every second counts was their slogan, and they were all about making everybody that came through the room like this is the best part of their day. So they were like over the top hospitality. And then they had mentioned this book in there, and it was oh, for Pete's sake, I'm in my wife's office right now because it's got better lighting. On my bookshelf, it's in there, and it's shoot, I'll send it to you so you can put it in the notes. But they talked about being hospitable and ways to make and it pure restaurant business area of like ways to make your room or make your business more hospitable. And again, they touch on, you got to be a technician, you got to have really good food, right? If the food isn't good, no one's going to show up. If the place is ran like a circus, no one's going to want to be there. And then from there, the entrepreneurial side of things is kind of all ties into this idea of really focus on the hospitality part. So it was trying to focus on being more hospitable, trying to make some grand gestures towards kids and make it to where it's a highlight of their day rather than the kid that you're having to pull to get into the weight room to do everything that you want. So it kind of shift gears from focusing on what could be to trying to get the most out of who we have in the room, which is the goal of strength and conditioning, is to get to bring the ceiling, push the ceiling, but also to pull that floor up as much as you possibly can. So if we could somehow pull that floor up a little bit and make it to where kids love the room, it makes a big time difference. So I think I get caught up in trying to get those 10 percenters that, they're dragging the room down, or man, they just don't get it, or whatever it is. I try to focus more on how can I make this place more hospitable for everybody. So a lot of that is celebrating success. So we got the PR bell in the room. We're tracking and recording, ranking and publishing things. We're, giving kids opportunities to be leaders in the room, and then highlighting when they do a good job. So it's been, we had a unique academy schedule where teams come in and train with their team. And you get those kids that are kind of outliers, but you could see something in them. And because our room is set up the way that it is, because we're tracking things, we could pick out those kids that, hey, you're not a very good volleyball player, but man, you'd be really good at offensive line. You know what I mean? So like, and in the big school, like in the small schools, everybody knows everybody's business. So like some of the things that I would do they didn't resonate because they're like, well, we already know that. You know what I mean? Or we know this. And now we have kids in, the soccer academy that's going, hey, who's this? Who's Johnny? What's he doing? What's the way up here? And then they make a connection, and then it's all stemming from the room. Being able to kind of make the room a little bit more hospitable to everybody. Hair ties for girls, Band-Aids. My the other sports performance coach at Casteel, Michaela Bubak, who's a tremendous coach. Just the hospitality part that she plays is such a big deal, because it's like, there's times where a girl will be coming into the weight room with a lift and she's wearing an NHSSCA shirt. And I was like, where the heck did you get that? And she's like, oh, I forgot my shirt. Bubak had an extra one. So she, you know what I mean? Like stuff to just like, she just ways to make the room more hospitable, and kind of diving into that project has really helped with continuing to seek the best, which is our mission as a program.
Well, I'm glad you kind of hit on that. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it takes maturity to get there. I've had a couple kids in the room. They wouldn't be the kids that you would think would come in, right?
Right.
They want to take their game to the next level, but they're not meatheads. They're just looking to get better. And maybe earlier in my life, I may have buried them too much in the weight, like we're going to get you there. And now I think I'm getting to a point where it's like, okay, I know if I bury them, they're not going to come back. But if I can ease them into this, maybe we create something. And my daughter, she thought of the hair ties exactly like you said. You got girls coming in here now. They need hair ties. They need these things to make them feel like they're at home and they're not in just a boys' weight room. So to hear you say that makes me think that maybe some of my ideas aren't too far off.
No, and again, I have every great coach, every great educator has stolen, borrowed, whatever you want to say from other coaches. Ryan Johnson did an in-service. He's a strength coach at Wayzata High School in Minnesota. Great friend, great dude. He had sat in on a professional development where they were talking about the triune brain theory. So you have to calm down that reptilian brain inside of your skull to where it's like they feel safe. You know what I mean? So it's it was one of those pieces where it's like, okay, if they know the rituals, they know the routine, there's a voice overhead that goes, get rack ready. Okay, I know what I'm supposed to do. But at the same time, if they need assistance, I'm not distracted from everything else going on and I can help them. I cut my hand. Do you have Band-Aids? Second from the bottom drawer. It's child lock, so you got to hit the button. You know what I mean? Like I can do all those things to help everybody feel a little bit more welcome and at home. And then Kevin Vanderbush had talked about the kid whose reptilian brain, he needed the kids that need attention. He would, I think during attendance, he was like, okay, so-and-so needs attention. Everybody give him 2 claps. And then they give him 2 claps. And then that would calm down that kid's brain to where, hey, I got my attention. Now I can get into the flow of things. And it all relates to that. He gave a presentation. I believe it's on the NHSSCA videos coaching portal deal there. If not, you can reach out to him. He'll talk to you about that. And then getting to know like the kids that have some trauma in their past or what's going on. I mean, I really there's so many kids. There's 800 plus kids. It's hard. I could tell you what some kids bench and I couldn't tell you their name. Like it's really tough to get the aspects of everything that's going on. But if you have a kid that, their life is a really bad country song, their truck broke down, their dog died, everything's going, kind of cattywampus, making it to where it's normal for them to have that conversation to calm themselves down, to be able to hang all that stuff up before they come into the room, knowing that it's going to be there when they leave, but you can take this 45 minutes to just focus on yourself and we're here to help you out. I think that's a big piece of it. So, and the more you do these things, and if you really do care, you're going to start spending more time working on culture and building. And I know no one wants to hear that. They all want to hear how good of a technician you have to be and how that's going to be the best thing. But in reality, you have to figure out a way to build those relationships. And as I've tried for 10 years of how to be efficient with building relationships, and it's just not that way. It's the most inefficient thing on the planet. It's building a relationship with somebody, and it takes time. So you got to find ways to make that time, and it can't be cold. So I've done hey, we're going to do a 5-minute meeting, and I'm going to get to know you. It's got to be, hey, what did you do over break? Did you see any good movies? And then through those conversations, you find out that, hey, their dad just got back from deployment and this is what's going on. And then you could take that hospitable brain and do something cool with that. You could do all sorts of stuff that clicks. It might be easier, to tell you the truth, to do it in a meaningful way when you have as much volume as we see, because those kids probably don't see or get recognitions in their other classrooms or whatever's going on. So it might be as simple as, hey, I need your opinion on something, or ingratiating some kids. What do you think about this? Like something that deals with the room, or maybe not, but like, hey, what do you think if we did this? Do you think that'd be a good idea? And then you get some great feedback, number one, and two, they are a little bit more invested in the program. So they're like, hey, remember that idea that I had that you did? It worked out pretty good, didn't it? Yeah, it's a good idea, man. You might have a career on your hands. Just things that are going to be calming end up doing more for you in the long run. You got a seventh grader or eighth grade 64-pound guy that has everybody else in his class is lifting 100 pounds more than they are, and they just feel completely lost. But they feel comfortable in the room because they know what's going on and they know what they can do. And then they hit a growth spurt 2 years later, and they're all of a sudden they're running 20 miles an hour and hitting home runs. It's like there's stories there. And then when you build up enough stories, that's when it just becomes a little bit more automatic.
You'd mentioned it earlier. If your programming's good, they're going to get strong. You almost have to try to not get them strong.
Yeah, if you're not doing the reps, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and then you have solid programming.
So in saying that, psychology and its role is almost above programming in an environment with kids. I mean, it just seems like, if you don't understand what's going on with them, you're already lost. If you can get that part figured out, everything seems to fall in place. Is that kind of where you're starting to be with yourself?
Yeah, and it takes a lot of work. And then there's other aspects that'll come into play that you understand. Like there's certain things that I wish that I could be the answer for, but I'm not. I know to start reaching out to other people and bring that circle of influence around to building the room up a little bit more. I'm not disingenuous with it. I just know my limitations and been like, I've tried it a handful of different ways. I just don't have that influence to make this run. I need your help. And then typically that results in somebody doing a much better job than you could have ever done. And as long as nobody cares who gets credit, it's things can go a really long way. Brett Bartholomew, who's a South Omaha boy, now he's in Arizona now. He has classes to teach you how to be better at these things. It is an investment. It is something that you need to spend a lot of time on and practice. But shoot, I did his apprenticeship earlier this year and with my wife, and we've gone through and role played tough conversations that we needed to have, and it's been a lot easier to make these conflicts as neutral as possible. Like it's not bad, it's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral. Like it's something that you need to address and what's going on. And it's been kind of one of those things where you end up solving a lot of problems by identifying what's actually wrong in the first part. So it's like, this kid doesn't pay attention. They're not doing it. Well, they don't feel like they belong in your class. They have an issue with this person that's at their rack and they got to have this. So it's like, okay, do we change the environment? Do we do something that's different there? Do we need to actually have a resident advisor experience and conflict resolution? You got to draw from different aspects of your career and life that you might not have otherwise tapped into or thought that belonged in the weight room. But yeah, that's kind of where we're going. We're not pros by any stretch of the imagination, and we don't claim to be. It's we're taking tactics from other people that have been proven to work and are very well vetted. In terms of Brett's stuff, it is beyond researched, and being able to tap into those things and do it in a way that maybe it'll work, and if it doesn't, we might table it. And sometimes it's just timing and being able to catch them at the right time to where, man, this hit, it took off like gangbusters. And now I need to record it, like what we did, what worked, what didn't work. Coming back, we reintroduced the PR bell in the weight room. It's a sweet brass bell. The football team booster club got it. It's awesome. And it was at my last school, North Bend. It wasn't that big of a deal. Here, it's a hit, man. They love it. Like they are more in tune with where their estimated max is. They know where they're at. They know where each other are at, and they celebrate it. So that bell goes off, the whole room, celebrates with you. So if you're celebrating with people, that means you belong. So it's a good litmus test as to what that looks like too.
So taking this a little further into the psychology and empowering kids and giving them a voice, getting your athletes coaching, getting them to understand what needs to happen, coaching the guys or girls in their rack, coaching the other athletes, picking out mistakes, and then the person getting coached, receiving the coaching. Mm-hmm. How have you been able to set that up?
Just providing opportunities as much as we can. I mean, you're going to have that kid that everybody sees as a try hard. You know what I mean? And they're going to want to coach everybody else up and do all the things that you want them to do, but it's going to fall upon deaf ears. So what I've been trying to do is try to give those kids some feedback as to, hey, if they don't want your advice, move on to the next cat. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Like maybe that they'll see what's going on there and then they'll pick it up vicariously. You know what I mean? They might see that, oh, it is your ankle mobility and you should do this stretch in between squats. And I know coaches told you that and I told you that, but you had to see this kid get a lot better before you believed it yourself. So it's really just providing opportunities to do that. Another thing that I brought back with our football team this year is the drafting teams and then having team competitions and attendance and all that kind of stuff. It's given kids that, I took a huge step back. So I set it up and I took a huge step back. Any issues that came up, like I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So it's like I had to have the backups for the backup and all that kind of stuff. And this time I just went, I'm going to take a step back and let them find the solutions that they want. They elected some captains that were no-brainers. That kid's obviously going to be a captain. And then they selected some captains that, like, man, that kid struggles a lot in certain areas. And I don't know if that's going to be a captain. Just the fact that they picked him a captain, they're there every day. They're coaching. They're engaged. They're doing what's going on. And it's like, I took a huge step back and let them and are letting them roll with it. And it's paying off. We'll see how it goes this next semester. But again, that's something I used to do every year, and it kind of lost steam. And I'm like, man, I'm doing all this work, and it's not getting us anywhere. We're better off focusing on fly 10s or competition style for just individuals rather than the team piece of it. Drawing in from other people and trying to figure out things that not everybody's great at everything, and nobody likes to be bad at stuff. So if we're focusing on certain things and that kid's terrible at it, but we don't have a piece of the puzzle being, the game that they're good at, it makes a big difference. I mean, Scott Leach's Scores and Stops, he put out a tremendous resource. It's like $50 or something silly how many times have you dropped $25 on a program or whatever just to see what it was? And tremendous resource. And it's all about positioning and getting yourself at a good angle, making people miss with one step, cutting, changing direction. Some of our kids are really, really good at that, and they're really good at angles, and they're really good at tackling. But we don't do that in the weight room. You know what I mean? We don't tackle in the weight room. So if I could have a 15-minute segment where we're focusing on this and that kid shines, he's going to come back into the room and start to work on some of this other stuff with a little bit of, bravado, a little bit of ambiance to him, to where, hey, I scored a bunch of points for my team, and now I'm going to come in here and kill this workout. It's little things like that and it might not work. Like you go to put something in and it might not work. And me and Bubak are always talking about having 75% structure and then 25% flexibility in our programming and how we're going to run the room. And it's more like 60-40 now, because so-and-so's got a game today and they just played 8 games over the weekend and their back hurts. So, okay, so the room's going to run and coach, you're going to work with him or her over there and get them figured out, get their programming figured out. The return to play, finding gaps where kids feel like they just drop off the face of the earth. Trying to solve those things has been our focus.
You'd mentioned something in there a little bit earlier, and it really hits on something I've been wondering about. So I'll dig a little deeper. The kid that wants it, the kid that's coaching and wants it more than the kid that's in the rack. How do you
Yeah.
how do you temper that kid that's coaching and get him to just draw it back a little, that he can't or she can't make the kid want it more than the coach wants it?
Yeah, I struggle with that. I do. And a lot of coaches that I've since moving out here have been like, Rob, you can't save them all, man. Like you try and you get things going, but you're spending a ton of effort on this kid and they are just not reciprocating it at all. It's not their time. Like they're not ready for it yet. So you can circle back to it. Certain people don't want to have the big back slap before they go on a squat max. Certain people don't get excited about those things. I try to group them with like-minded people. Some kids get upset that they have to really dip down when they go to squat, but other than that, it's it just changing the environment or giving them those little pieces of like, hey, why don't we have you go with these guys for a little bit more? They're ready for you. You're ready for the pump up rack type of thing. Change the environment, talking to them. They're clearly excited, so they need to get that out some way, shape, or form. So talking to them about the programming and what they think or what's going on, like they want to be more invested, more involved, more engaged. So give them an opportunity elsewhere to do that. Kind of alleviates some of those, social norm, awkward turtle things where, man, this might not be the right crew for you. We have a ROTC kid he's an awesome kid. He's super excited all the time. He takes it very seriously. He's put on some serious lean mass. Great kid, super pumped up all the time. And because he's an ROTC, he can't be in the varsity class. So he would fit in great with the varsity classes. They're all there and everything's what's going on. But some of the kids in the JV crew, they're JV for a reason. So sometimes he doesn't quite fit in with that style. So giving them, and I benefited greatly from just getting his opinion on certain things and how he sees that we could make some fixes. That way he doesn't get frustrated and just let out on, certain kids. It's like, hey, we're trying, man. We're piecing these things together. Sometimes you're not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. He's not your cup of tea either, but he might be really good at kicking a field goal. He might be really good at deep snapping or, whatever it is. We all play a role. So kind of helping that kid find their role and allowing them to express it in a way that's fulfilling to them.
I heard you talk about this, and this really got me thinking. So now I got to sit down and start taking better notes of what my guys are doing.
Yeah.
But using numbers to track what it needs to do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. So let's say you've got a lineman and you've tracked a few linemen. Well, you've got a kid that comes in and you're like, hey, to be where you want to be, we need your broad jump to be in the 90s. We need your squat to be in the 400s. We need your flying 10 to be down around 1. Using those predictors so that you can start helping kids understand where they want to go. I heard you talk about that, and I wonder how that's coming, how you're instituting that for young athletes.
Throwing the benchmarks out there, given position and height. So it's got to be something that fits their build. So I am a prime example of that. Like I was not a 6'4", lineman, but if I am going to play offensive line at this level, I'm going to need to be around this weight, because if I'm not, I'm going to get thrown around. Like it's very, very obvious. I mean, shoot, we got guys that are 6'7", 315 pounds, and you got to go block that guy. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that physics is real. Like it's not made up. It's not theoretical all the time. So it's trying to get things realistic and then put them in a sense of control. The psychology of being like, okay, I can't get any taller, but there's a lot of 6 foot tall or under successful linemen that, what were they doing? And I was like, well, to tell you the truth, they were really good at angles. Their technique was fantastic. They had these things taken care of. They knew what was going on. They knew where the ball was going, so they knew where they needed to be. They knew that if I take 3 less steps to get there, I'm going to get there before they know what I'm doing, and I'm going to be in an advantageous position. I need to know leverage. Maybe I should take up wrestling. Maybe there's something there. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things that you can do to put that in the spectrum, and you have to gamify it. Kids are used to looking at screens, so doing the Madden score of some sort, and then tying in everything that's there. Fergus Connolly and Game Changer went through, and Cam Jossie expanded on it, on the coactives that make up a whole athlete overall player wellness, and they are absolutely true. You have the technical side of the game, you have the tactical side of the game, you have the physical side of the game, which is what our piece of the pie is mainly focused on, and then you have the psychological part of the game too. So you pull up, here's their classic example was Tom Brady and Cam Newton. You got 2 high level athletes that are really good at their sport. They had 2 of 32 positions in the game of football in the NFL. One had a primarily physical component to their game. The other one had the technical and the tactical part completely figured out. And then the psychological piece, like you had 2 high level athletes, but they had different ways that they make it happen. And that piece is like, okay, the physical side of things, this is what you would need to get to. Here's your capabilities. You know what I mean? So, and it's all based off of research and science and where you're at. I'd like to, in this next year, go through and have the biological age predictor that I got from Richard Burnett, who created the plyomet. I think that is something that I would like to get into because it gives a good idea of, hey, this is where you're at. Physically speaking, you're probably going to get it to be about this tall, according to these certain biometric components, measurements, all that kind of fun stuff. We're not there yet, but we're trying to get to that point. Hard to do that with a lot of kids. So, but giving them here's where you're wanting to be. The 5'10", me as a junior in high school, I weighed 330 pounds. It's like, that's not good. Your vertical jump is not going to be very good if you're overweight. Your fly 10 is not going to be very good if you're overweight. So kind of giving them those benchmarks and just showing them on the daily. We update it every week. So it's like, you're this much closer, or you took a step back, you're here, you're there. I think the power metrics, the strength metrics, the speed, all those things being updated frequently, keeping their mind fresh in it. And then their parents knowing where they need to get to. So what can my kid do to make the varsity squad? Well, physically speaking, here you go. Like it's cut and dry. There it is. Now, does that mean that if you hit all these dots, you're going to be a varsity player? No, because it's one of 4 coactives that come into play here. Your kid has got all the power, all the strength, everything in the world, but they don't know the game of football at all. They don't know what 3rd down and 8 means. They don't know what this is going on. So maybe we need to spend more time working on that. And that's where we're heading, hopefully, is working with every sport coach and being like, okay, physically, this is where we're at. And we got to be a good example of how to demonstrate that and show them where they're at, and the parents and all the stakeholders, where everyone's at and where they're going. Celebrate improvements, celebrate success all along the way, but then also tapping into those other resources that I can't I don't know very much about. So I know enough about soccer that you could watch 3 seasons of Ted Lasso and grow a mustache. That's about all that I got about soccer. So the technical and the tactical part of that, showing them, giving those coaches an example of how you can grade out and evaluate what's important, and then tell them how they can get better at those areas. And then doing that in the technical piece, how's your one touch pass? How do you, work with others in the triangle offense? How do you, whatever it is, how well do you run the zone blocking scheme? Man to man very well. And then you have the technical, or that was technical. Then you have the tactical part. Do you understand where you fit in the game? Do you understand the game itself? Your IQ, sport IQ. And then the psychological piece, like, do you make a bad play and then you're done for the rest of the day? How do you overcome adversity? And there's a ton of research on all of these pieces that people in other areas than you have a better understanding, and they're going to do a better job of it. So if the goal of the program is to seek the best and to get the best outcome, you need to take that, bite of that sandwich and punt to those that are a lot better at this, and then hopefully be a good organizer of putting all those pieces together and showing the kid and their parents and their brothers and their sisters and everybody that's involved what they can do to get the most out of their time so that they can have an enjoyable career as a student athlete, and then hopefully set them up for later in life being like, well, I'm 5'11". I no longer play offensive line. Maybe I don't need to be 280 pounds, and then learn those traits and take them past graduation or past sport.
I will hit you with this last one. I know you are on vacation and you have an afternoon to enjoy, but I was wondering about this, kind of going back to the volume piece we spoke about earlier. So you're getting a lot of young athletes in. Flexibility's not always there, mobility's not always there, and strength's not always there. How do you accumulate volume when their compounds just aren't very good? Their squat's not good, or their bench press isn't good. What are you doing to get the volume in you want to start creating the size?
Well, the following a long-term athletic development plan has kind of been our approach to it, and it works pretty well. So giving them time to understand those things. I know in the private sector that's hard. I know I'm going to see you next week. I also know that I'm going to have a job whether you're here or not. Like there's it's a time and a place type of deal. But for me, you need to learn how to train first and foremost, and that's from the Canadian model. I think they have like a 6 or 7 step thing. I just busted down to 3. We learn to train. So you got to learn the norms and the rituals, what things are called, how we record things, where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, all the rituals and everything like that. And during that time, they're going to put up the volume that we're looking for. So it's going to be, they're starting out with 0 reps. So they're super novice. If we could build them up to, in 2 training sessions, having about 500 to 700 good quality repetitions across the board, keeping frequency high. So with those young underclassmen groups, we're going to do everything every day. We don't have an upper lower split. We're going to do everything every day. Some sort of power piece, some sort of strength piece. I kind of combine everything to where it's like, okay, we're going to do a sprint day where we're focusing on sprinting. Tier 1, we come back in for tier 2, and we're working on strength. We're going to do an upper body tier 1 and then lower body tier 2 for your secondary movements. So they're going to push, they're going to pull, they're going to squat, they're going to hinge. They're going to do some groundwork every day that they're in their training. It's just to build up that frequency. And then using your warm-up to introduce a lot of different things and have that accumulate over time. So using every second that you have throughout the training session to be like, okay, we got this part down. Now we got to start focusing on some lateral movements. So we're going to add this, line hops. I mean, really simple stuff. But if you do it 50 repetitions every time that you do the movement or every day that you come in to train, if you can just focus on them doing it well, that volume will accumulate. So finding those nooks and crannies where you can sneak in some different volume, making it fun along the way. And then introducing, I'm not too concerned with periodization when we're learning to train. I just want you to get the repetitions in, challenging but not impossible. Get every rep in. I'm counting reps. because that's when I'm going to pick one of you cats out each and every set. And if you don't get the repetition that you need, that's a strike. We get 3 strikes. Everybody's got to do that movement pattern that we missed at the end because we need the volume. So if you missed on bench press, we got more push-ups at the end of the session. If you miss your squats, we got more squats at the end of the session. And just focus on the idea of you're getting these high quality reps built up throughout your whole pattern. Working with progressions. So you have kids from different, they've been training with their uncle in the garage and they back squat 800 pounds, like that's what they are going to say. We're going to start you out with the goblet squat because I haven't seen you do that yet. We're going to build up to where you can do a goblet squat with 45 pounds. If it looks good, then we move on to front squat. We're going to do front squat probably longer than you think you should. And that's because I want to build this upright torso, and you'll see it as we go. A lot of storytelling, a lot of, we have this many 500-pound squatters, we had this and that, and kind of borrowing from the private section a little bit and being a little bit of I'm terrible at it. I'm not good at going, hey, this is what we've done. This is what we do, and that's how you guys, private sector, that's how you make a living. So I don't blame, I'm not down playing that at all. It's what we need to do a better job of for the purpose of having them believe in our systems and our programs. And then from there, we'll add in some periodization. So with our kids, our 8th and 9th grade groups right now, we added periodization in two mesos ago. So about 6 weeks ago, we started 5-3-1, super basic. At the end, they do as many reps as they can. Now they have enough underneath their belt to where at the end of the training session, they're getting a lot of reps in, add a challenging weight. We establish 1 repetition maxes. We're ringing the bell. We're super excited about stuff. And then from moving forward the rest of the way, now we're going to start seeing more separation between some sports. So that way they feel they have an understanding of when they're in a room with other sports. So-and-so is going to be doing this. They're doing that. And I'm engaged in what my program is, but I work together with the entire room. And then from there, we'll go into train to compete. So that's when we're really going to start giving them the benchmarks, giving them their ideas as to where they should be if they're a shooting guard and are 6 foot tall. Those types of things that they're going to see, okay, this is where I size up. A lot of that data we're building ourselves. So, I mean, you don't have, high school softball metrics. I don't. So I'm building them. We're building them. We're putting them together. This girl played shortstop. She's now a Division I softball player. She was able to do X, Y, and Z in the weight room. So we're kind of building up those stories as we go. And then from there, it's building into training to win. And when we're training to win, that's when we're starting to transition from more the strength focus. They have that base of strength. They're reaching more of their biological maturity. So now we're going to start pushing power output and things of that nature. And this is year 3 at Casteel, so we're just starting to get into that realm. It's a lot of fun. And again, if we're engaged and we're having fun with coaching them, they're going to get engaged and have more fun with it. And sometimes that volume accumulation is a tough pill to swallow at times. I change the repetitions in and out. I change the sets a lot. So if hey, we're gonna do 5 sets today instead of 4. Hey, we're gonna do 6 sets today. We're only gonna do 2 sets of power. We're gonna do 6 sets of strength today. And the kids are like, what? Whoa, what are we doing? So it just trying to creep in and kind of taking a look at our numbers and where they're at. And obviously that is going to vary per sport. And we're able to do that because we have the schedule that we have.
Well, the more you talk, the more obvious it is that the awards have come to you for a reason. So I appreciate all the time you spent. I know where you are, it's really nice. Where I am, it's getting pretty chilly. So indoors talking on a podcast is perfect. Where you are, you got tons of options. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time and setting this up, Coach.
No problem. I'm always up for talking shop, and I always come out of these things a little bit more invigorated and ready to go. My kids we dedicate Wednesdays to podcast days. So I'm fortunate enough to take my kids home from school. So they'll be stoked to hear it on the radio. So Pike, Clara, and Jordan, hope you enjoy listening to this.
Hopefully I asked him good questions.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.